I never really expected a thank you after 15 years at Halverton Systems. I knew how these things usually went. New leadership, new lingo, new charts on walls that meant less than the people they replaced. But I didn't expect to be told I was no longer aligned with the future of client success in front of the very team I'd helped build. So when Mara leaned across the conference table, folded her hands neatly, and said those words with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, I didn't interrupt, I didn't defend, I didn't look for a way back in, I just nodded once. I hope the quarterly review lands well on Friday, I said, adjusting the pen between my fingers. The room was silent. My team, people I'd trained, vouched for, watched fumble through their first presentations and later win contracts I used to dream about, kept their eyes on the table. Mara didn't respond. Maybe she expected more resistance. She was 31, hired directly from a boutique firm that specialized in operational evolution. No prior experience in biosystems, no client rapport, just a solid command of management trends and a portfolio of polished pitches. I didn't feel angry. What I felt was heavier than that, something like quiet inevitability. When I stood to leave, nobody said anything. I walked back to my office, shut the door softly behind me, and opened the same drawer I hadn't touched since my daughter started high school. Inside were 2 boxes. One marked personal, one marked if this day ever came. I took out the first one. Photos, a few printed thank you emails, the cork mug with the fading world's okayest manager text. I'd gotten it as a joke, but after a decade of showing up early and leaving late, it felt about right. The second box had something else entirely, hand-labeled client records, an external hard drive, and a sealed envelope marked closure. As I packed, I could hear faint movement outside my door. A pause, a knock. Beth stepped in. Senior analyst, one of the best hires I'd ever made. Quiet, absurdly smart, loyal to a fault. "This doesn't feel right," she said softly. "It doesn't have to," I replied. "It just has to be over." She hesitated, then placed something on my desk, a USB stick, just in case she starts rewriting history. I nodded, not taking it. "Thank you, Beth. Don't get pulled into the noise. You're better than that." By 5 o'clock, the only sound in the hallway was the low buzz of fluorescent lights. The place was already shifting without me. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't send a final email. I carried my boxes out to the parking lot, one under each arm, and placed them gently in the back of my truck. By the time I got home, the sun was starting to fall behind the hills. My wife Elise met me at the door with a mug of black coffee. She didn't ask if I'd lost my job. "How's your spine?" she asked instead. "Still straight," I said. We sat at the kitchen table like we always did. One side of the table still had the grocery list scribbled in pencil. The other side still had my laptop open to a spreadsheet of deliverables I no longer had any obligation to send. It was strange, watching your purpose flicker out so quietly, no crash, no echo. Just off. I first joined Halverton right out of grad school, back when the building had beige walls and smelled faintly of carpet glue. The founder, Daniel Halverton, was still around then. Sharp eyes, wrinkled hands. He hired people, the way gardeners plant trees. Slow, intentional, expecting to wait years before seeing shade. I started as a junior liaison, answering vendor calls and deciphering vague client emails at 2 a.m. But over time, I learned how biosensor accounts really worked, not through tutorials, but through mistakes. Meetings that went sideways, technical specs that didn't match promises, engineers who needed fewer slides and more silence. By 33, I was running the client ops team, not because I asked to, because Daniel started forwarding me the contracts before anyone else. He trusted me to protect the thing he'd built, and I did. For over a decade, I was a reason Halverton made it through 2 industry downturns and 1 regulatory overhaul. When global partners got cold feet, they called me first, not because I had the cheapest quote, but because I remembered how they took their tea and what sensor variant they'd rejected 3 years ago, and why. But Daniel retired. And the new CEO, his son, was a different kind of builder, the kind who saw legacy as overhead. And then Mara arrived. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't even unqualified, just blind to nuance. She measured performance by dashboards, not people. Every relationship was something to streamline, every process something to cut. At first I tried to help. I offered to walk her through the more complex accounts, show her how we'd kept certain clients for 12 years without a single breach in trust. I drafted briefing memos, invited her to listening sessions, even offered to split meeting loads. She declined. She wanted to rethink the model from scratch. Within weeks I saw the pattern. Meetings scheduled without me, junior staff reassigned without notice, clients told they'd be seeing fresh faces soon. I knew where it was going, not because I was paranoid, because I'd done this long enough to know when the tablecloth was being pulled, so I prepared, not by fighting, by observing, by documenting every shift, every silent replacement, every small signal that the end was near. On Thursday evening I sat in my garage, reviewing notes from a project I'd been leading for nearly a year, the Windmere Diagnostics rollout. A $26 million systems contract with a client that required exacting standards and personal trust. The kind of account that would never sign off without multiple deep tech walkthroughs, all led by someone they knew. Mara had no idea what was coming. She thought handover meant uploading a deck and letting automation do the rest. But Winmere didn't want automation, they wanted me, and they were scheduled to arrive at Helverton's downtown office on Friday morning at 9:30. Didn't plan to attend, and I didn't plan to help, not out of bitterness but because I wasn't invited and because I was already moving on. By 7 a.m. Friday morning, the house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional click from my wife's teacup as she tapped it gently on the counter. I was already dressed, not in a suit, just a button-down and jeans. The kind of clothes you wear when you're no longer trying to prove anything. "You going in?" Elise asked, without turning around. "No," I said, finishing my coffee. "But I'll be downtown. There's a place on 12th with good Wi-Fi." She didn't push. She just nodded, like someone who understood that staying silent was sometimes a form of support. I'd arrived at Kettle and Grain just after 8 o'clock. It was nearly empty. A man in the corner typing aggressively. A barista humming along to some acoustic cover of an 80s song. I set up at a small table near the back and opened my laptop. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. Call from Mara, 8:14 a.m. I let it ring. She tried again at 8:18, then 8:25, then 8:33. Each call went unanswered by 8:45. I had 3 emails. One flagged urgent, all titled "Need help with Winmere materials ASAP." I didn't open them. Instead, I opened a new email draft addressed to a contact at Elenther Biosystems, a rival firm that had once tried to poach me 3 years ago. Their VP of Client Partnerships had sent me a message back then. "Whenever you're ready to grow again, we'd love to talk." Maybe it was time. I hit send. By 9:20, I'd received 2 replies from executives at competing firms. One was offering a lunch meeting, the other a video call slot later that afternoon. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Beth. I answered. "She's in a tailspin," Beth whispered. "Winmere just arrived and asked where you were." Mara tried to start the briefing, but they stopped her, said they wanted technical walkthroughs, not a partnership strategy overview. "Let me guess," I said. "She opened with the new value proposition slides." "She did," Beth said grimly, "and they were not impressed. They asked for the implementation flowcharts, the ones only you built." "Did she find the blue folder?" "No, and I didn't tell her where it was." There was a pause. "They asked for you by name," Beth added. "Said they didn't feel comfortable moving forward without someone who understood their diagnostic systems end to end." I stirred my coffee. "Well, I don't work there anymore." Beth hesitated. "They know that now." One of the engineers asked if your departure was a temporary leave. Mara said it was a structural reorganization. They didn't look reassured. I didn't respond. At 9:47 a.m. Mara sent another email. Subject line, "Please respond. This is urgent." No body text, just attachments, broken out decks, contract snippets. Even a photo of my old whiteboard scribbles she'd clearly found on someone's phone. I closed the email window and opened a spreadsheet labeled Future Notes. A quiet list I'd started, keeping a month ago. People, opportunities, gaps in the market, half-dreamed ideas about building something from scratch. By 10:15 Beth texted again. Winmere left. They gave Mara 20 minutes. She couldn't find half the documentation. Didn't know about the audit protocol alignment. They said they'd circle back, but I don't think they will. That was a $26 million account gone. It wasn't even surprising. Winmere didn't want a consultant. They wanted continuity. They wanted someone who'd built trust over time and understood their concerns without needing to reread the brief. Every morning they'd been promised depth. Instead, they got buzzwords. I received one more call that morning. This one from Martin, the CEO himself. I hadn't spoken to Martin directly since the company Christmas party 2 years ago. Back then, he shook my hand and told me I was the quiet spine of Helverton's reputation. He said I was irreplaceable. Turns out, people say that a lot when things are going well. "Randy," he said, "now, we need to talk. I'm not an employee anymore." "Martin," he sighed, "I'm aware. But this situation with look, let's just say there were oversights. You approved them," I said softly. Another pause. "You're right, but I think we can course correct. We're prepared to bring you back on as a consultant if needed. Set your own terms." I looked out the cafe window. A city bus hissed to a stop. People filed off, already late, already tired. Life moved on, whether you were prepared or not. "It's not about terms," I said. "You made a decision. You trusted someone who thought knowledge was interchangeable. That trust came at a cost. I'll double your old salary. It's not about money, Martin. It's about judgment. And unfortunately, I can't fix that for you." I ended the call. 2 minutes later, Mara texted, "Please, just help me fix this." I didn't reply. That afternoon I joined a video call with the VP from Elenther. The screen flickered once, then resolved into a man I remembered from A conference years ago, graying at the temples, soft voice but clear eyes, still interested in building something slow and strong. He asked, I think I've had enough of fast and hollow. I said. He smiled. We're ready when you are. We talked for 30 minutes, no pitch decks, no pressure, just possibility. When the call ended, I sat still for a while, fingers pressed lightly against the lid of my laptop. I wasn't rushing, but I also wasn't waiting anymore. That evening, Elise found me reorganizing the garden shed. Tools we hadn't used in years, screws still in their hardware store bags, a rake missing half its teeth. What are you doing? She asked. Making room for what? I shrugged. New tools, maybe. Something worth using. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. You always did know how to start over. I thought about Mara, frantically clicking through folders she didn't understand. I thought about Martin, trying to buy back what he'd already thrown away. And then I thought about Beth still inside that sinking ship, trying to do good work in the middle of a storm. Tomorrow, I'd make her an offer. Not out of revenge, out of respect. Saturday morning began slowly, the way good mornings do. Light creeping through the blinds, a kettle on the stove, the silence of a phone that wasn't buzzing anymore. I was sitting on the back porch, reading through notes I hadn't opened in months, sketches for a consulting model I'd once outlined, and then forgotten. Not because I lacked ambition, just ... Stability had made me lazy. Beth called just before noon. Hey, she said. Got a minute? Always, I said. Her voice sounded tired but steady. I think I'm done, Randy. I stayed because I thought I could help steer the ship, but it's not a ship anymore. It's a raft. I know, I said quietly. They're still blaming you, by the way. Said you deliberately left the Windmere account half documented. I left everything in plain sight, I said, except the parts they never bothered to ask about. Beth let out a sigh. Martin called me in for a one-on-one, offered me your old position, said it was a chance to rebuild trust. Did you accept? I said I'd think about it. I waited, she continued, but I don't think I want to be someone's cleanup crew anymore. There it was, that quiet shift. The moment someone realizes their value isn't based on loyalty to a broken system, it's based on what they bring and where they choose to take it. What if you didn't have to be? I said. She didn't respond right away. I've been in touch with a few places, I added, and one of them's open to building something real. A consulting division from the ground up. Pharmaceutical systems, compliance strategy, full autonomy, you mean? Build something together. I smiled. Not a rescue mission, a new build, real team, no games, just the work. Beth was quiet for a long time. Then she said, you have no idea how much I needed to hear that. I think I do, I said. That evening, I drafted a message to Tom, my old colleague on the international side, multilingual, fiercely loyal, someone who'd been patient through years of underroot. If anyone understood what it meant to stay quiet while the loudest people rewrote the rules, it was him. The next morning he replied, ****, I'm in, just say when. ****, by Monday, the pieces were moving. The new firm, a mid-sized outfit called Liren, wasn't flashy. They didn't need to be. What they offered was space. Room to build, room to lead without constantly looking over your shoulder. They had backing, vision, and enough humility to know when they didn't understand their clients. That's why they wanted me, the CEO, a soft-spoken woman named Patrice, didn't ask me to explain why I'd left Halverton. She just asked me what kind of team I'd need to build something better, and she listened. That was new by Wednesday. Beth had signed on as Director of Systems Integration. Tom was reviewing his offer for Head of Global Partnerships, and I was officially named Senior Vice President of Development. We didn't poach, we didn't gloat, we just moved forward. Quietly, intentionally, like architects laying the first stone. The following week, Elise found me ironing a shirt I hadn't worn in over a year. You nervous? She asked strangely. No. Excited, I think. Relieved. She leaned in, then it was the right move. I kissed her forehead and said the thing I hadn't said aloud until then. I didn't leave Halverton. I just stopped waiting to be taken seriously. Our first client pitch came from a diagnostics lab in Boston. Not huge, not flashy, but growing fast and needing help navigating the complex thicket of pharmaceutical compliance without losing their human touch. I sat in their boardroom on a Tuesday morning, surrounded by scientists, tech leads, and visibly skeptical procurement officers. I didn't open with slides, I didn't quote numbers, I just listened. Asked about their pain points, about the late-night calls from regulators, about the way they struggled to get engineers and marketers to speak the same language. And then, quietly, I told them how we'd help. By the end of the meeting they were already asking about start dates. As we left, Beth glanced at me. I forgot what it felt like to be useful. No, I said. You just forgot what it felt like to be seen. On Friday, my phone buzzed again. Martin. I let it go to voicemail. He called again an hour later. This time, I picked up. Randy. He said, I want to apologize for everything. For letting Mara push through decisions I should have questioned, for choosing short-term optics over long-term stability, for not listening when it mattered. I didn't say anything, he continued. We've lost 4 clients in the last month. Windmere, obviously, but also 2 European accounts and 1 in Quebec. They all said the same thing. We lost our touch. We lost the people they trusted. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. And I meant it. Martin exhaled. If there's any chance you'd consider coming back, I wouldn't, I said, gently. But I appreciate the call. I don't suppose you'd recommend someone for the rebuild. I paused. There's no rebuild without trust, Martin. That's where it has to start. And I don't think you're ready for that. He didn't argue. He just said, take care, and hung up. Later that evening, I received a package at home. A notebook, my old one. The blue spiral-bound pad I'd left behind. Inside was a note from Beth, written in her careful script. Asterisk, asterisk, for whatever you build next. Asterisk, asterisk. I placed it on the new shelf in my office, not because I needed it anymore, but because it reminded me of everything worth carrying forward, and everything worth letting go. 3 weeks later, the rhythm had returned. Not the old rhythm, with its 7 a.m. meetings and after-hours crisis calls. Something quieter, smoother. Our small team at Liren was beginning to settle into itself. Morning check-ins that felt more like conversations than status reports. The sense of mutual respect, of space to speak, of time to think. We weren't building something fast. We were building something clean. Beth was thriving. The systems she was designing weren't just efficient, they were elegant. She had a way of turning regulatory chaos into something almost readable. Clients started requesting her personally. Her inbox, once ignored by execs who underestimated her quiet nature, was now the busiest in the office. Tom, meanwhile, was sending updates from Singapore, then Zurich, then Sao Paulo, each one punctuated with photos of new offices and screenshots of welcome messages from international partners. He hadn't smiled this much in years. As for me, I finally stopped dreaming about Halverton. I stopped thinking about the clients who never called back, or the ones who probably wondered if I'd just vanished. Slowly, as the weeks passed, that part of my life folded into the rear view like an old highway exit, still there, still on the map, but no longer on my route. It was mid-September when Patrice called me into her office. She was seated at a small table, not her desk, a subtle gesture that meant we were talking as equals. She pushed a document across the table, a proposal, expansion into the biotech advisory sector, a new wing, built under our team. My team. We've been approached by a few groups, she said, looking for full-spectrum advisory, not just compliance or integration. The whole ARC strategy, hiring, systems, implementation. And you want us to take the lead? I asked. I want you to own it. It was an unexpected offer, but not an unearned one. And strangely, it wasn't the responsibility that gave me pause. It was the thought of having to hire again. Not resumes, people. People who might have just gone through what I'd gone through. People stuck in firms that didn't listen, didn't learn. People like I used to be that night. I drafted a short email, subject line, asterisk, asterisk, open doors, asterisk, asterisk. It went to a dozen former colleagues from Halverton. People who had stayed silent too long. People who had left quietly. People I hadn't heard from in years but still respected. The message was simple. Asterisk, asterisk, I don't know what your situation is, or whether you're happy, but if you're looking for something better, slower, quieter, real, let's talk. Asterisk, asterisk, no sales pitch, no promises, just an opening. By morning, I had 9 replies. One of them surprised me. It was from Nina, Halverton's former head of legal compliance. She'd always been sharp but distant. We'd worked on a handful of overlapping issues, always with mutual respect, never with warmth. Her email read, asterisk, I've followed what you're building at Liren, and I have to admit I didn't think it was possible to create something like that in this industry anymore. If there's space for someone like me, I'd like to talk. Asterisk, I replied immediately, let's meet. We spoke 2 days later in the same coffee shop where Mara's empire had quietly imploded months ago. Nina showed up early, already reviewing printed notes, wearing the same composed expression I remembered. But something was different now. She was tired, but not of the work, of what the work had become. She talked about being sidelined, overwritten, told to make things simpler when what the company needed was more understanding, not less. About watching new hires walk into meetings with confidence and leave with contradictions. I'm not burned out, she said. I'm just done watching people ignore what matters. That was all I needed to hear. By the following week, she had an offer in hand. In early October, we signed our 5th major client, a multinational firm based out of Toronto, with operations in medical device trials. They wanted oversight, discretion, and above all, continuity. They'd heard about Liren through the grapevine. No ad campaign, no big splash, just whispers. You're the team that took Windmere away from Halverton, aren't you? One of their executives asked on the call. I didn't confirm or deny. I just said, we're the team that listens. One morning, Elise found me sitting in the garage again. But this time, I wasn't sorting through old junk. I was sanding a workbench, carefully, slowly, making space to build something by hand for the first time in years. She smiled. You're back. Maybe for the first time, I said, because the truth was, all those years I spent staying loyal to a name on a letterhead, I thought I was protecting something noble. But what I'd really been doing was holding my breath. Now I was exhaling. On a quiet Thursday, my phone rang. Not a number I recognized. I answered anyway. It was Mara. What her voice was thinner now, measured, no pitch in it. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, she said. I don't want anything, I replied calmly. I just wanted to apologize. She didn't elaborate. She didn't spin, just silence. I let it sit. Then I said, I hope you've learned from it. I have, she said. Too late, maybe, but I have. Good, I said. Then maybe it wasn't a waste. She thanked me and hung up. No second ask, no attempt to fix what couldn't be fixed. It was the first truly professional thing she'd done. That weekend, we celebrated Elisa's birthday. Our daughter flew in from school. We cooked together. No big party, just warmth. At one point our daughter pulled me aside. I read about your firm online, she said. Everyone's talking about how your team rebuilt the model from scratch. We just stopped doing the wrong things. I said, that's leadership, right? Sometimes, I replied, it's just knowing when to walk away. Winter settled over the city with a kind of hush I'd come to appreciate. Not the bitter silence of resentment or retreat, but the kind that comes after a long storm has passed. You step outside, feel the cold, and realize you're still standing. Liren's new advisory division was up and running, not with fanfare but with quiet consistency. Every client we brought on wasn't a conquest, it was a relationship, carefully chosen, carefully nurtured. Beth led pharmaceutical systems with an ease that still surprised me, even after all those years of watching her work. Nina brought structure to our compliance protocols, not just policy, but clarity. And Tom, calling in from Madrid that week, was negotiating partnerships with a confidence no one at his old job had ever encouraged. We weren't trying to disrupt the industry, we were trying to remember how to do things well. One evening Patrice asked if I'd be willing to sit for a podcast, something her communications director had suggested. A quiet conversation about leadership, trust, and transition. I hesitated at first. I wasn't interested in telling my story as some dramatic comeback, but she understood. You don't need to be the headline, she said, just the through line. So I sat down for the recording that asked me, what do you wish companies understood about people like you? I said, that the quiet ones usually see everything. They notice the gaps, they cover the work. And when they go, what leaves isn't just skill, it's memory. They asked, what's the hardest part about starting over? I said, admitting to yourself that the place you were loyal to was never loyal back. Then they asked, softly, what do you hope comes next? I paused, then said, I hope we stop confusing disruption with wisdom. That we stop rewarding certainty when what we need is care. I hope we remember that trust isn't built with efficiency, it's built with time. The interview got a modest amount of attention, a few reports, a few messages from strangers who'd gone through similar things. One message stood out. It was from a former intern of mine, James, who'd left Halverton years ago for grad school. He wrote, I heard your voice today. I remembered how you used to make time to walk me through every contract. You didn't just explain how it worked, you explained why it mattered. I try to do that now wherever I am. I closed my laptop and sat back in my chair for a long time. Not in triumph. In peace. In February, Martin stepped down as CEO of Halverton Systems. The board had finally moved after a sixth client defected an investor. Confidence began slipping beneath quarterly thresholds. I learned about it through a quiet press release. No scandal, just the usual language. Strategic realignment, new direction. We thank him for his years of service. Mara, according to Beth, had taken a job in a consultancy firm that emphasized change agility. I wished her well. I meant that people grow or they don't, but they always move. That spring, Liren signed a new deal with the University Hospital Network. Their procurement officer, a calm no-nonsense woman in her 50s, shook my hand and said, "You've got a team that listens." "That's rare," I smiled. "We're just trying to do right by people." She nodded. "Keep doing that. The rest takes care of itself." Elise and I took a long weekend in the mountains that April. No phones, no laptops, just books, firewood, and silence. At one point, looking out over the ridge, she said, "Do you ever think about what might have happened if you'd stayed?" I didn't need time to answer. No, I only think about what wouldn't have, because the truth is Halverton could have kept me comfortable, but it never would have let me grow. 3 months later we moved into new offices. Nothing massive, just 3 extra rooms, a new glass conference space, and a quiet corner for the break area. Beth brought plants. Tom shipped over a framed map from his travels. Nina placed a quote by the door that read, "****work quietly, lead by remembering." ****. The first time I saw it, I just stood there for a while. Then I turned off the lights and locked the door behind me. A few weeks later, my daughter Casey called from campus. "You're in one of my textbooks," she said, half laughing. "What?" "There's a case study. They don't name you, but it's clearly about Halverton, about how their reorg failed because they lost too much internal knowledge." The author calls it strategic self-sabotage. I chuckled. That's one way to put it. She says the recovery came not from rebuilding, but from people leaving and building something better. There was a pause on the line. Did you ever want to get even? She asked. No, I said. I just wanted to be useful. She thought about that, then said, that's the difference, isn't it? Some people try to win, others try to matter. I swallowed a little too hard. I'll remember that, I said. I hope you do. I got it from you. Now, every Friday at noon, our team gathers in the break space. No agenda, no deliverables, just lunch stories, a few shared wins, and sometimes silence. And sometimes that's the most valuable meeting of the week because the real work, it gets done in the in-dash between dot and the trust, dot in the remembering dot, and in the decision every day to do it quietly, but not invisible, not anymore.